You didn't wake up ready today. You woke up because you had to. Before the day even started, you already felt the weight of continuing. Nothing dramatic happened. Nothing visibly went wrong. And still, everything required effort. You had to function. Answer. Decide. Hold yourself together. That kind of day doesn't look hard from the outside, but it costs you internally, because nothing fell apart. And yet it took everything you had. You didn't wake up feeling strong. You woke up feeling responsible. And responsibility has weight. Not the kind people notice. The kind you carry quietly. The kind that asks you to stay composed. While your inner world feels crowded, this season has been full of days like that. Days where nothing collapses, but nothing feels light either. You keep showing up. You keep responding. You keep things moving. And slowly, you start to feel it. Not all at once, but in the way your energy becomes more guarded, in the way your patience develops limits, in the way rest becomes necessary, not optional. Nothing fell apart, but it took everything you had. There were moments when you questioned why everything felt so demanding, even though nothing seemed wrong. You went through entire days where the tasks were familiar, the routines were the same, and yet your energy felt lower than usual. That kind of tiredness is confusing because it doesn't come from chaos. It comes from continuity, from having to remain attentive, from staying emotionally available, from holding responsibility without relief. You didn't lose motivation overnight. It slowly thinned. Not because you stopped caring, but because caring requires strength. And this season asked you to care longer than you expected. You learned to function without the emotional margin you once had, to keep decisions clean, even when your inner world felt crowded. That adjustment didn't happen instantly. It happened day by day, through quiet discipline and unseen self-control. And even though it felt ordinary, it wasn't insignificant. Those days mattered because they trained you to stay steady without relying on urgency, to continue without external reinforcement, and to discover that endurance often looks like calm persistence, not dramatic effort. Scripture understands this kind of endurance deeply, not the loud kind, the steady kind, the kind that keeps going without relief or recognition. Psalms 73-26 says, "My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart, and my portion forever." This psalm wasn't written in the middle of a visible disaster. It came from internal strain, from comparison, from emotional fatigue, from the weight of continuing when things felt unfair. When the psalmist says, his flesh and heart may fail, he's not describing collapse. He's describing depletion. He's still standing, still functioning, but aware of his limits. And that awareness does not disqualify him. It invites God's strength. into the place where his own ends. That's how you've been living. Not powered by excess energy. Sustain. Enough strength. For the next conversation. Enough clarity. For the next decision. Enough steadiness to make it through the day. Without unraveling, this season hasn't asked you to be impressive. It's asked you to be consistent. And consistency costs more than people realize, because it doesn't give you the adrenaline of urgency. It requires discipline. There were days when your emotions lagged behind what life required from you. You still showed up. You still answered responsibly. You still carried what needed to be carried. Psalm 55-22 speaks directly to that reality. Cast your burden on the Lord, and He will sustain you. Notice what it says. Sustain. Not remove. Not immediately resolve. Sustain. David wrote this psalm while leadership pressure continued. Betrayal didn't disappear. Conflict didn't pause. The responsibility stayed, but the crushing weight did not have to stay on his shoulders alone. That distinction is what kept you going. You didn't stop carrying responsibility. Who stopped carrying it? As if you were the only one holding things together. That quiet shift protected you. It kept fatigue from turning into resentment. It allowed you to continue without hardening. This season also asked you to regulate yourself in new ways. You learned to pause before reacting, to think before responding, to choose restraint, even when expression would have felt relieving. That takes strength, not loud strength, mature strength. Psalm 121-3 says, He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. This promise doesn't say the ground won't shift. It says you won't fall. And you haven't. You adjusted your pace. You learned when to slow down. Not because you were weak, because you were wise. This season taught you that speed is not the same as progress. That pushing harder isn't always the answer. Sometimes endurance comes from pacing, from learning how to last. Nothing fell apart, but it took everything you had to remain steady. You also learned that not everyone carries weight the same way. Some people step back when things become demanding. Others stay quiet and absorb more. You became more aware, of what you can reasonably hold and what must be released. That awareness didn't come from theory. It came from experience, from living through days that asked a lot without offering relief. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." You began guarding your heart, not by withdrawing, but by becoming discerning. You learned to say no internally, even when you said yes externally. You learned to protect your inner life so you could continue functioning without breaking. That is not selfishness. That is stewardship. This season also reshaped how you define strength. You used to think strength meant clarity, energy, confidence. But this season taught you that strength can exist alongside uncertainty, alongside fatigue, alongside unanswered questions. Psalm 66:10 says, "For you, O God, have tested us. You have refined us like silver." Refining doesn't destroy. What matters? It removes what cannot last. Silver remains. It becomes clearer because of the heat. You're clearer now. Clearer about your limits. Clearer about your priorities. Clearer about what deserves your energy. That clarity came from pressure that didn't explode, but persisted. And it shaped you quietly. Isaiah 40:31 says, "Those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength." Waiting here doesn't mean stopping. It means continuing without immediate results, without visible payoff. You did that. You waited while working. You waited while deciding. You waited while carrying responsibility, and strength was renewed. Not as excitement, but as steadiness. Enough to stay aligned. Enough to stay faithful. Jesus speaks gently to people living this reality. In Matthew 11:28, he says, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Notice who he calls. Those who labor. Those who are already carrying weight. Rest here is not escape. It is restoration within responsibility. Jesus does not minimize what this season cost you. He acknowledges it. Nothing fell apart, but it took everything you had. And God knows that. He saw the restraint, the discipline, the quiet endurance. Nothing was wasted. Not the effort, not the fatigue. This season shaped you in ways that will protect you. And what comes next? You didn't become harder. You became steadier. You didn't become louder. You became clearer. That matters. If this message spoke to you, Like the video. Share it with someone who is holding things together quietly. Subscribe for more devotionals. Let's speak to real life and real faith. And if you'd like, leave a comment saying, God sustain me. May His peace find you today.